Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
Welcome to this edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I'm Arjun Chaudhary and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Manoj Pathak.
नमस्कार। मार्केट मंत्र के ताजा अंक में आपका स्वागत है। आधे घंटे के इस कार्यक्रम में हमेशा की तरह हम देश और दुनिया की चुनी हुई कारोबारी, आर्थिक और शेयर बाजार से संबंधित ताजा खबरों को लेकर हाजिर हैं। हमारे साथ खबरों पर चर्चा के लिए स्टूडियो में आमंत्रित हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक पत्रकार सुषमा रामचंद्रन। सुषमा जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत है।
थैंक यू।
आइए आरंभ करते हैं अंग्रेजी में हेडलाइन से, जिसे लेकर मौजूद हैं अर्जुन चौधरी।
Domestic stocks witness mixed results as Sensex closes above the 59,900 mark. Nifty settles near the 17,600 level. Brent crude remains almost steady to trade at $82.85 per barrel. And the first G20 employment working group meet under India's presidency in Jodhpur.
घरेलू शेयर बाजार में मिले जुले रुख से सेंसेक्स 59,000 के ऊपर बंद हुआ। निफ्टी 17,600 के नजदीक आया। ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमत $82.85 प्रति बैरल के आसपास चल रही है और G20 रोजगार कार्य समूह की पहली बैठक आज जोधपुर में हुई शुरू। आइए आरंभ करते हैं खबरों का सिलसिला। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजारों से प्राप्त मिले जुले संकेतों पर घरेलू शेयर बाजार में आज सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी में अलग अलग रुख देखा गया। एक और बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स मामूली बढ़त के साथ 59,900 के ऊपर पहुंचकर बंद हुआ, जबकि नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी मामूली घाटे के साथ 17,600 के नजदीक बंद हुआ। कारोबार के अंत में सेंसेक्स 224 अंक यानी 0.4% की बढ़त लेकर 59,932 पर बंद हुआ। उधर नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी 50 6 अंक घटकर 17,610 दर्ज हुआ। विस्तारित बाजार की ओर चले तो छोटी और मझोली कंपनियों का प्रदर्शन सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी पैक की तुलना में थोड़ा बेहतर रहा। बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स 0.2% लाभ में रहा। स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 0.4% की वृद्धि हुई।
The Sensex today witnessed modest gains, while Nifty observed modest losses amid mixed global cues. The index of the top 30 companies of the BSE, the Sensex, ended above 59,900 points. The index of the top 50 companies at the National Stock Exchange closed near the 17,600 level. Sensex climbed by 224 points, a 0.4% to finish at 59,932. Nifty 50, however, fell by 6 points, or 0.03%, to settle at 17,610. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap index rose by 0.2% and the small-cap index surged by 0.4%. In the Sensex pack, 17 companies posted gains, while 13 witnessed losses. ITC was the top gainer as it rose 4.7%, followed by IndusInd Bank, which gained by 3.25%. Hindustan Unilever added 2.45%. On the other hand, NTPC slipped by 2%, followed by HDFC, which declined by 1.85%. Titan fell 1.8% and Tata Steel lost 1.75%. In the sectoral indices at the Bombay Stock Exchange, 9 sectors gained, while 11 logged losses. The FMCG sector index gained by 2.2%, followed by IT and the tech sector, which surged by 1.6% each. On the other side, utilities tumbled 3.8% and power sector declined by 3.4%. The oil and gas sector plunged 2%. The overall breadth of the BSE trade was negative as shares of 1,654 companies gained while 1,846 companies fell. Shares of 127 companies remained unchanged. Sushma, what's your take on the market? We saw mixed trading today. We saw a fall in the market and then it recovered. We saw short covering and the data that's come from the FII and the DII in terms of the equity purchases. They're net buyers in the market today. The FIIs with a net buyers to the tune of 1,785 crore rupees and the DIIs 530 crore rupees.
Well, first of all, yesterday was the budget, and of course, you know, there's always volatility when the budget is presented. In fact, before the budget, in the run-up to the budget, generally for about 2 weeks, you anticipate volatility, and I think the Sensex actually, the stock markets actually welcomed the budget. It was a modest budget, and there were, of course, whatever tax changes and all, which you must have discussed yesterday. But of course, the Sensex fell yesterday due to other factors relating to one major company. But today, I think the gains are probably reflective partly of the fact of the positive impact of the budget. Firstly, I think the personal income tax changes, which have been welcomed by the middle class, while of course these do not impact the companies per se, but there is a general feel-good factor that has come in. The other thing is that I think the anticipation that which you have, I think we've had experts giving their views that probably the foreign institutional investors will come back to the Indian market because inflation in this country, unlike many others, has been contained. And of course, the fact that the Federal Reserve has given an indication yesterday, I think that is also very significant. The U.S. Federal Reserve increased increased interest rates by 25 basis points, giving a clear signal, very dovish signal, that they are now going to move towards the side of slowing down. It's not that they're going to probably stop aggressive rate hikes, but keeping in view the fact that inflation has moderated in the U.S., there is going to be, they're going to slow down on that. So that, I think, the several factors, the fact that India's valuations are, of course, right now the people are thinking India valuations are a little on the high side. But the fact is that the way in which the economy has been managed has been, India is a bright spot in the world right now. So FIIs were expected to come back. They have started to come back, and of course, that's always a good sign.
सुषमा जी, एक बार फिर से हम बाजार की ओर लौटना चाहेंगे और समझना चाहेंगे कि बजट की लंबे समय से प्रतीक्षा चल रही थी, उथल पुथल के कयास भी लगाए जा रहे थे जो हमने देखे। यहाँ बजट जब अब आ चुका है तो एक शॉर्ट टर्म में और मीडियम टर्म में कौन से ऐसे सेक्टर लग रहे हैं जिनके लिए अपेक्षाकृत जो हमारे आम निवेशक हैं उनको अपने निवेश पर बेहतर परिणाम देखने को मिल सकते हैं?
देखिए, एक तो खैर एक तो बैंकिंग है। बैंकिंग के बारे में शायद कई बार बातचीत हो चुकी है कई प्लेटफॉर्म्स के ऊपर कि जो बैंकिंग की जो स्थिति है इस वक्त 4 साल पहले से बहुत बेहतर है। जो 4 या 5 साल पहले की जो स्थिति थी जिसमें नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स बहुत ज्यादा हो गए थे, तो इसका जो स्टेटस है बैंकिंग का सिचुएशन है बहुत अच्छा रहा। एनपीएस बहुत नीचे आ गए हैं एज अ परसेंटेज ऑफ देयर टोटल दिस थिंग क्रेडिट, इट हैज कम डाउन। और दूसरी बात ये है कि सरकार ने भी कुछ रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन किया है बैंकिंग क्षेत्र का। उन्होंने कई बैंक्स को मर्ज किया और मेरे ख्याल लॉन्ग टर्म जो ऑब्जेक्टिव है सरकार का यही है कि ये हमारे देश में बहुत सारे नेशनलाइज्ड पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स है, प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक्स भी है और पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स भी हैं, लेकिन पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स काफी सारे छोटे छोटे हैं, तो उनको मजबूत करने के लिए उनको मर्ज करने की कोशिश की जा रही है धीरे धीरे करके, ताकि सिर्फ 3-4 एंटिटीज हमारे रहे और वो जो एंटिटीज हैं फिर ज्यादा एफिशिएंट और प्रोडक्टिव और प्रॉफिटेबल हो जाए। तो इस डायरेक्शन में जा रहे हैं और बात ऑफ कोर्स ये भी की जा रही है कि डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट भी होगा कुछ बैंक्स का, तो वो भी कुछ पाइपलाइन में है। तो पूरा जो बैंकिंग क्षेत्र है वो बदल रहा है धीरे धीरे करके। पर सबसे बड़ी बात जो मैंने पहले कही है, जो एनपीएस की जो स्थिति है वो बहुत अच्छी है, बिल्कुल बहुत नीचे आए प्राइवेट सेक्टर में भी और पब्लिक सेक्टर में भी।
Sushma, you mentioned about the bank Nifty. It's gone up by 156 points in today's trading, and investors are awaiting the third quarter results of the bellwether company State Bank of India tomorrow.
Yes.
Do you see that as a driver for the market at least tomorrow before the weekends?
Yes. As far as banking is concerned, SBI is certainly the largest bank, and it is certainly a driver for the market. There are other major banks also which are important. HDFC is important, but SBI is the largest, and I think one is looking forward to the results, and much will depend. The market, of course, it's a blue chip, and in the case of SBI also, it has the level of NPAs has gone down, creditworthiness has gone up. So there is, and several smaller banks have also been merged with State Bank of India. So yes, it's going to be an important bellwether stock tomorrow.
The IT Nifty was down only marginally by 6 points, but there was a lot of volume-based trading in this particular space today because the earnings are in US dollars. What is the prospect for this particular index for investors who are looking to buy into stocks?
Well, IT has been doing very well. IT and technology stocks have been doing very well. Basically, services exports from this country, and this is where IT contributes substantially, have been booming. I think it's over $250 billion or something in that range. And they have actually, this is one sector which has benefited from the depreciation of the rupee over the past year. So now, of course, the dollar has become a little weak, but even so, the IT companies are still in a good position. Despite the fact that if you see globally, IT companies have been doing layoffs. Some of those there has been a spillover in this country as well. There have been layoffs also, but not to such a large extent. And also, there is a feeling that all the people who have been laid off, I mean, this is the reports that I get, they are likely to be reabsorbed in other companies. We have a large number of startups also, and there are more startups coming back into the country. And so there's not so much of a fear of the people being kind of these very highly skilled people being stranded.
Also looking at the small cap and the mid cap index, they also went up marginally by 0.2% and 0.4% in tandem with the Sensex, even though the Nifty actually fell oddly enough.
Yes.
But with Sensex, the small cap and the mid cap also rose. Are we seeing some structured buying into the market right now by our portfolio investors, whether DIIs and FIIs, unlike where we saw some skewed buying interest across the sector?
I think one of the factors is definitely the measures that were taken in the budget, because there's been a lot of focus on MSMEs in the budget proposals yesterday. And one, of course, is, and you have to look also at some of the benefits given to the micro and tiny enterprises. The level for presumptive taxation has been raised from 2 crores to 3 crores. And then also, these are very small things but very important, that the deduction for expenditure on payments will be made only when payments are actually made. And this is in light of the fact that there are huge amount of payments which are due to these small and tiny units from various government departments and even private sector agencies. Studies have shown that the problem of delayed payments is huge. And also, of course, the allocation to the Ministry of the MSME ministry has also been increased. That is marginal, but compared to revised estimates, the actual budget estimates last year were 21,000 crores something. Revised estimates were 15,000 crores, and this year it's 22,000 crores. So higher than the revised estimates. So there a lot of focus on MSMEs, and of course, I forgot the main thing is that 9,000 crore infusion, which is expected to result in credit availability of about 2 lakh crores for the MSMEs.
The credit guarantee scheme.
Credit guarantee scheme, correct. So a lot of focus on MSMEs, and I think that could be one of the reasons that you have this.
बजट से जो कह लें कि जो औसत मध्यम वर्गीय परिवार है या कह लें कि ग्रामीण भारत है, वहाँ क्या परिवर्तन आएगा और क्या उनके लिए इस बजट ने दिया है?
देखिए, इस बार उन्होंने बहुत ये कोऑपरेटिव सेक्टर के लिए बहुत सारी चीजें की हैं. ये प्राइमरी एग्रीकल्चरल कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज के लिए उन्होंने एक स्कीम तय की है जिससे ये पीएससीज को बढ़ाया जाए. पहली बात तो ये है, और दूसरी ये पीएससीज के में इन्वेस्टमेंट ज्यादा होगा जिससे वो कोऑपरेटिव्स अपना स्टोरेज कैपेसिटी बनाएंगे ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में. ये एक बहुत बड़ा मतलब बहुत बड़ा इश्यू है, क्योंकि जब उनकी जो किसानों की उत्पादन जो है वो वहीं पड़ी रहती है या स्टोरेज कैपेसिटी बहुत दूर होती है, तो ये अगर स्टोरेज कैपेसिटी उनके जहाँ उनके फार्म्स है,
यानी जहाँ उत्पादन हो रहा है
वहीं पे स्टोरेज कैपेसिटी होगी, तो कोऑपरेटिव सेक्टर को जरा बढ़ाया जाएगा और कोऑपरेटिव सेक्टर के ऊपर काफी फोकस है और ये एग्रीकल्चरल क्रेडिट सोसाइटीज में काफी पुश दिया जा रहा है इस बजट प्रपोजल्स में.
Sushma, we also saw the quarterly results for Titan, which fell by 4% year-on-year only, whereas Tata Chemicals actually the net profit consolidated went up by 22% almost. How would you advise investors on Tata Group companies?
Well, I mean, I don't like to advise on, specific companies. But if you take as a sector, chemicals and petrochemicals is, doing very well in our country, and demand is growing for chemicals in many areas. And then if you go, Titan is watches, jewelry. This is again an area that you have, which is growing post-pandemic, because you had this problem before the pandemic that the demand had come down completely. And also, of course, it's a paradox that at the higher income levels, the purchases and the demand is going up, whereas it is not going up so much at the lower income levels. And this is, of course, a problem that needs to be resolved, that more demand needs to be put, more money needs to be put in the hands of those at the bottom of the pyramid.
And what's your take on the market tomorrow? Because today was the weekly F&O expiry as well. So there's bound to be some volatility, even though the VIX is showing a decrease of 6%. But, the volatility is pretty mixed during the entire period of the trading session. How do you see the markets behaving tomorrow?
Well, I think basically the push in the market, the big push in the markets has been given by the budget, and the budget has been received fairly well. I think the most important thing, one of the most important thing is that the government has been able to maintain fiscal discipline. This is something that the markets have been looking forward to. And that means that the government is confident of revenue buoyancy, and that expenditures are well within control. Current account deficit, maybe there might be some pressure on it, but everything seems to be well under control. So as I said, it's a kind of a modest budget. It doesn't have anything flashy in it, but it is I think the kind of budget that we needed for the time being.
आइए चलें वैश्विक बाजारों की ओर. एशियाई शेयर बाजार सबसे पहले, जहां मिला जुला रुख आज दिखा है. निवेशकों की लिवाली से दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 0.8% लाभ के साथ बंद हुआ. जापान के निक्केई 225 सूचकांक में 0.2% की वृद्धि हुई. उधर बिकवाली के दबाव में हांगकांग का हैंग सेंग 0.5% लुढ़क गया. सिंगापुर के स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स में 0.4% की गिरावट हुई. हालांकि चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स बिना किसी खास उतार चढ़ाव के अपने पूर्व स्तर के नजदीक बंद हुआ. यूरोपीय बाजार की ओर चलें तो समाचार तैयार किए जाने तक वहां अच्छी खासी लिवाली दिख रही थी. अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में जर्मनी का डैक्स 1.5% ऊपर चल रहा था. लंदन के FTSE 100 और फ्रांस के CAC 40 में 0.4% की वृद्धि बनी हुई थी.
So what's your take on the Chinese market right now post this COVID reopening of the economy? It seems that their stock market has recovered. There seems to be optimism that business will be back to usual, unlike skepticism earlier about China's return. What's your take?
Well, I think, if it's coming back to normal, that's good news. That's good news. As I always say, good news for China is good news for the rest of the world, because it is an important supplier of goods to the rest of the world. It's an important buyer of goods. Now that China has come into the market, for instance, metals prices, which had fallen dramatically, have now come up. Aluminum prices, copper prices, everything, the prices have gone up. There's a buoyancy in prices. Well, that might be inflationary to some extent, but the fact is that the market has come back to life. And similarly, demand in terms of course, you have not had that kind of an impact as far as crude oil is concerned, but China is a big buyer of crude oil, also the biggest importer. And so I think it is all to the good if the Chinese manufacturing capacity, not just the stock markets. I think what is important is that the manufacturing capacity must come back to normal. And that has to be seen, that when it's going to happen, because China is very important in terms of global supply chains now. Of course, one, for instance, is semiconductors, where, the U.S. has imposed a ban on certain products going to certain types of semiconductors going there. But even so, it remains a very key element of global supply chains in many products, and automobiles, pharmaceuticals. And therefore, and the end result is that, we are able to access these products more easily, whether it is India or whether any other country. And therefore, we should welcome it.
The China Plus was floated quite a bit, especially during the period of the lockdown. And now the budget is seeking to empower MSMEs a lot more, especially in its green initiative. But what we have seen is business has to some extent, a small extent, diverted to Vietnam, and then they're looking at India. So how do we have this turnaround more advantageous to our economy?
Well, I think you mentioned Vietnam. You're very right. Vietnam and Indonesia are the two countries that companies which are seeking to move from China. Because many companies, many countries now feel that there has been excessive reliance on production output coming from China, so they want to diversify. So it is true that we need to, to match the kind of ease of business environment in Vietnam or Indonesia and these kind of countries, India needs to do more. We have done a lot. We have gone up the ease of doing business index in a big way, but we need to improve in terms of cutting down once again on procedures. The drive to digitize procedures has has been doing well, but at the same time, I think there is also this budget also has some digitization issues which are not related to ease of doing business. I think they are related to probably identity issues that to when you go to banks. But these are the kind of problems that investors face here. On the plus side, you do have Apple coming to India, not to Vietnam and Indonesia. I mean, they are expanding here, and they see that India is the place where they can have a base. But as I said, it is important for us to really ensure that digitization takes place, because I have heard of cases where where they say that there should be no interface with the income tax, and suddenly the systems are down, and the person has to meet the income tax official.
Very briefly, your take on UK inflation. The FTSE 100 has gone up marginally by 0.6%. How do you see the UK economy? Briefly.
What is the latest on UK inflation?
Well, the inflation is still relatively high. Have they been able to control it?
Yes. The UK inflation has the same, it is the same problem as other developed countries. I think India has done much better compared to most of these European countries. They are all inflation is ruling at 40-year highs. I thought when you mentioned UK inflation, it's come down or something, but they're all ruling at 40-year highs, whether it is the UK, whether it is France, whether it is other European countries. And of course, they have been also their central banks have also been increasing their interest rates. But I think we have achieved a stability in this country as far as inflation is concerned, much better than other countries.
Well, the Bank of England has hiked rates by 50 basis points. That's the latest in terms of what the central banking is there. Let's have a look at the U.S. market now. The Wall Street closed sharply higher yesterday after Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell acknowledged that inflation was starting to ease in remarks he made following a quarter-point rate hike by the U.S. Central Bank. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 0.02%, the S&P 500 gained 1%, and the Nasdaq Composite Index surged 2%. This calibrated approach to increasing what's known as the discount rate there as opposed to the repo rate here. What is the end game of the Fed Reserve? They're saying inflation is coming under control. When is that likely to happen, and what's the impact really not only on the US but on the rest of the world?
Well, I think it's happening probably quicker than anybody expected, because now they say they are heading towards what they call disinflation. But at the same time, they are worried about, jobs data. Though their situation is much better than, for instance, in India. That their situation is far better. But I think the impression one gets is he is really waiting for inflation to come down to about 4%. Now, we also have to remember that in India, what is the acceptable range for inflation is the central bank here has kept it between 4 and 6%, because we're an emerging economy. We have always dealt with a much higher level of inflation. But for the US and the UK and other developed countries, it's been 1 or 2%. It's always been very, very low. And so they have to bring it down to at least about 4%. And that's why they will probably continue the rate hikes till it comes down. But they're clearly in a dovish mode. The Federal Reserve Chief was speaking in a less aggressive mode than in the past. But he made it clear that they are going to wait till things stabilize.
Well, let's have a look at the oil market. Oil prices were steady today after tumbling in the previous session as a weaker dollar boosted sentiment, though looming sanctions on Russian oil products added uncertainty over supply. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $82.85 per barrel, while WTI crude prices was at $76.57 per barrel. How range bound do you see oil prices right now, especially with Chinese economy opening up in terms of consumption, but also the US dollar index is right now just above 100. It was at 114 a long time ago, a short time ago rather. How do you see the oil market reacting to that, and in terms of consumption, demand, supply, pricing?
Well, I think the dollar weakening is going to push up prices slightly. You are going to see that, and but so far it has just happened because the dollar has just started to weaken, and therefore we should have some impact of that. The other thing, of course, is that OPEC has continued its cut in production quotas of its members, and apparently members have not only cut production, they have cut production more than their quotas, so they're actually producing a lot less. And they're trying very hard because prices have not shot up as they had anticipated. The demand is not that high. China has still not come in a big way in the market. As I said, till manufacturing comes back in China, that demand is not really going to come back. So I think for the time being, as far as India is concerned, we are happy. It's around $80 or so, 82.
आइए चलें सर्राफा बाजार। मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में आज सोने और चांदी की समाचार तैयार किए जाने तक तेज चल रहे थे। अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में फरवरी में आपूर्ति किए जाने वाले सोने का मूल्य 748 रुपए बढ़कर 58,700 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम के स्तर पर चल रहा था। उधर मार्च में आपूर्ति की जाने वाली चांदी 2,212 रुपए बढ़कर 72,053 रुपए प्रति किलो के स्तर पर पहुंच गई। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजार पर ध्यान दें तो न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में सोने का मूल्य थोड़ा सा कमजोर हुआ, $1,971.10 प्रति औंस पर आ गया। चांदी भी कमजोरी के साथ $24.51 प्रति औंस के स्तर पर कारोबार कर रही थी। बहुत संक्षेप में प्रतिक्रिया सोने के मूल्य में लगातार हम आने वाले दिनों में ये नहीं कह लें कि क्या आसार देखेंगे।
देखिए अभी तक बढ़ रहा है और मेरे ख्याल में डॉलर वीकनिंग से इसका भी असर पड़ेगा। ये सोने के दाम बढ़ेंगे और दूसरी बात यह है बजट में अभी उन्होंने सोने और चांदी की जो प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनके ऊपर भी कर लगाए हैं, तो उसका भी असर होगा।
Well, let's have a look at our third headline story. The first G20 Employment Working Group meeting began this afternoon in Jodhpur amid tight security arrangements. A panel discussion with focus on developing collaborative roadmap for global skills was organized as part of the first Employment Working Group meeting under India's G20 presidency. The mandate of the group is to address priority labor, employment and social issues to further develop a strong, sustainable, balanced, inclusive and job-rich growth. The three-day meeting is starting with a panel discussion on exploring strategies for global skills and qualifications, harmonization and developing a framework. India is hosting delegates from 19 countries, European Union and 9 guest countries and 9 regional and international organizations.
बस यहीं पर श्रोताओं की ओर से सुषमा जी हम आपको बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहेंगे।
Thank you.
And before we close, a reminder of the headlines. Domestic stock markets witness mixed results. Sensex closes above the 59,900 mark. Nifty settles near the 17,600 level. Brent crude oil remains almost steady to trade at $82.85 per barrel. And the first G20 Employment Working Group meet under India's presidency in Jodhpur. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra for now. Goodbye.
Market Mantra.